On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use. Welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 50, created on August 30th, 2023. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me are Jeff in Minnesota and Neil out on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. I've got a full sale, top sale, bourbon barrel aged Imperial Porter, direct from Full Sail. Brought it all the way back from our trip.
I am having a Walls with Wounds, raspberry and blackberry goods. And so Walls with Wounds sort of sounds like something that is appropriate for cut down day, but it actually has a secondary component. It's from the Lou Gill Brewery from Ireland. And so fitting with our new punter.
All right. And I've got a Sundrop Old Fashioned, an old fashioned recipe from the Sundrop Soda Company out of Shawano. You can find that one online. Also, you can find us on YouTube and Twitter. Neil, he realizes we still call it Twitter, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
I mean,
yes, we're still on Twitter. It's at Green Bay Chat. We are on Facebook at the GBC Podcast, Green Bay Chat, and just the audio is available on Spotify. You can search for, you guessed it, Green Bay Chat. Well, what are we talking about tonight? It is going to be the preseason Game 3 against Seattle, and that leads to the 53-man roster. The cutdowns have been completed. We'll take a look at that. We've got a bit on the Packer Hall of Fame as the inductees are in town, and we have a guest tonight. We'll get to our guest. He calls himself the Kentucky Cheesehead in a little bit. But for right now, Neil, we've got a game, or so to speak, the end of his preseason to talk about. Green Bay effectively walks away with a victory in this one. But other than that, how did your team look against Seattle?
well, I mean, did we watch really it that closely in the second half? I know, John, you were there, so let's start out with that. I think you watched most of it, and I had the cooler up so Jeff could watch most of it. I cared most, obviously, about the Jordan Love drives, and there were some nice plays at the end. But fundamentally, what is Jordan Love doing, and what did the Packers do? And what I really liked about what the Packers did in that final preseason game against Seattle is they tried out some different things. They did situational football. So Jordan Love's final drive, they decided, okay, we're going to go and do a 2-minute drill. It doesn't matter that we're at the end of the first quarter and that there's nothing that actually causes you to have to do a 2-minute drill. We're going to do some situational football. They did some additional plays where it's okay, we're going to try to go for it on a third and short or do other things. And I think that is a perfect use of a preseason game. You've got something that is different than going against the players that you're going against on a day-to-day basis in practice. You get to go against somebody different. You get to see how certain things are going to work. Make sure that people are drilled appropriately for how to do certain types of things. And I think situational football is a perfect use of the third preseason game, or indeed any preseason game. So that was my favorite part of the game against Seattle.
My favorite part was watching the defense. Kenny Clark was ready to feast. Kenny is ready to play. That defensive line, first step was in the backfield on that whole first drive. They are ready to snap off the ball. This team is athletic. We know they're young, but they are the one thing that I've been wanting for years. They are fast. There is a lot of speed on this team, speed on the defense, which is where we have needed it. And I think that with the type of disruptive football they were playing on Sunday as well, I think this defense is going to surprise the league.
Oh, and you didn't mention TJ Slayton doing the Gravedigger too. You
Right.
Wearing the 93, got that size, and it was beautiful to see the Gravedigger coming back.
If you're a big guy and they gave you number 93 to wear, you're allowed to do the Gravedigger.
Some of the things that I liked early on by the offense is they did really well on third downs. They were 4 for 4 at one point. The defense, as you mentioned, really shut down Seattle, but at one point it was 11 first downs to 2. Even though the score didn't indicate that it was a blowout, really the first half was a good showing by the offense and the defense. And you're right. And plus it wasn't a straight up regularly played game. They were trying different things, situational football, like you said. They didn't go for it on fourth down. I think there was still, as we know now, the punter competition. So there were a lot of punts in this game too, and it was windy. So I think that also played a factor.
Jeff, there was some really good tight end play in there as well, and we know you like that.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you, John.
What about now? Last week, Jeff, I got to give you a hard time. You really gave Anders Carlson a hard time he came around and kicked one of the longest field goals ever kicked in Lambeau Field, 57-yard field goal. How did that one look?
Like a no doubter. Basically, it was like, okay, that was impressive. And I'd like to think that hopefully will get him, get some jitters out, get him over the hump, so to speak, or whatever. That, okay, this is our kicker, this is our guy, maybe warts and all. Hopefully he's not going to miss that many extra points. But man, there was a thing on Twitter. He can kick it, to Canada. You just don't know what province it's going to end up in.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, he was kicking that 57-yard field goal. He was kicking north, and I think, was it Wayne Larrivee or was it Harlan on TV that said he kicked it to Sheboygan, and then he realized he got corrected. No, we're facing north. Okay, I guess he kicked it to Crivets.
That was Harlan.
Yeah.
That was pretty awesome.
They did miss technically the extra point on the first touchdown. That was a block. Is that I didn't quite see it as well in stadium. How did it look on TV? Was that just a blocking scheme? What happened there?
No, the edge guy got off and around like freakishly quickly. He got a huge jump on the ball. Nobody ever touched him. It wasn't Carlson's fault. That one was, I would say, that was just really good individual effort.
Sorry, that's not good individual effort alone, because that should never happen if you're actually defending appropriately, if you've got your blocker set up appropriately. The fact that we've missed 3 extra points in the preseason in a 3-game period is a little bit alarming and screams out the most asshattery of asshats that we have possibly going on. And they better fix that element, because that was disconcerting.
Yeah. But like I said, it wasn't Carlson's fault in that case, that the edge guy got around.
Yeah, all 11 guys can fuck up. We don't need just one guy to fuck up. We can just spread the wealth around.
Mission accomplished then, right?
Or we could just do what the Rams did when their kicker went down and just go for 2 all the time if we're worried about our kicker. It's like if we're inside the 40, we just got to go for it. Outside the 40, I guess we can kick a field goal because he's good from long distance. Anything inside of that, and then extra points, go for 2.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like a plan.
So I wanted to make a shout out to 2 other players in the preseason game. And I'm going to go back to the offensive line, having already talked about the defensive line. Rasheed Walker playing both with the starting unit and with the second unit, playing left tackle, playing all over the line. We had John Runyon playing center a little bit later on. Sean Ryan had another beautiful game. That versatility that Gutekunst and LaFleur value as far as the offensive lineman is concerned certainly was showing in this game, and also showed how they absolutely want to see what we have. And I think that was a certain component of the game. It's like, we know which players are going to make the roster, but we don't know exactly what every player is going to do. And we don't want to learn this on the fly in the regular season. And so they were absolutely experimenting with different players in different positions as part of this preseason game. Again, part of what I would consider a really perfect situation for a preseason game, and for trying different things under situations that are not just practice against the guys you're going against every day, day in, day out.
The good news too with the offensive linemen, they're blocking, at least in terms of quarterback sacks. They allowed 1 sack the whole preseason. Even though it was an experiment, it seemed to be a pretty successful one, in that they did have 6 wherever they were inserted or whatever, which again is great for preseason, right? Because who cares if you win or lose the game at the end of the day, but to get those reps, to get that, okay, this looks different over here, and to be consistent. And then, like I said, then to pass block that well, to only allow 1 sack in 3 games. That's pretty impressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say the one thing I still would have to be concerned about is this fact that Josh Myers is regressing in his role as center. It's nice that, right, we had the situation where we've tried Zach Tom, we had Runyon in there, the kid that they cut that's back on the practice squad who was running with the 2s during training camp. So they know there's an issue there. I think they're looking to improve that spot at center. Boy, ideally, I'd like to see Josh Myers be that guy, because they invested a good draft pick on him. He seems to have the physical talent. And I don't know, it's almost like there's the yips going on there. You equate that to basketball, golf, or whatever else, and just something is missing right now, but he'll figure it out. And with that, with getting all the looks that we have on all these players, it allowed the team to, narrow down that roster from 90 down to 53. And that's what happened yesterday. We are going to take a look at not the entire roster, but maybe just kind of what we like here, what's going on. We know the core group of starters. We knew who was going to make the team. So you know your team is doing really well when you're having arguments over the third string tight end and whether they're keeping 6 or 7 wide receivers. So outside of that, I think we're feeling pretty confident about our team. Surprise move at the punter where Pat O'Donnell was dropped and they kept the wheeling. And then an interesting move. We still officially don't have a long snapper on the roster either, but that'll come around as they move player to injured reserve. But the roster in general, Neil, you like it?
I do. And just sort of going back to your point that Pat O'Donnell was the key cutter, the key potential surprise. I mean, if that's where your surprises are, I think you're in pretty good shape. I mean, both punters were obviously battling it out. And, there was nobody there were a few names that were sort of more prominent names that might have been cuts. And essentially it was all late round picks that were the people who were cut or undrafted free agents. So I don't think there were any huge surprises on that list. Now, I want to go back to the whole youth element and specifically that we now have the youngest roster in the NFL by a fair margin. And there's some controversy on Twitter about exactly how you do those numbers and making sure you do them consistently. But by one measurement, where our average age is 24.9 years. The next youngest is the Rams at 25.3. So we are substantially younger than any other team in the NFL. Now, the oldest are like 25.9. So it's not a huge thing. The whole range of players in the NFL is not that large. But nonetheless, we've got a very young roster. And just looking at our players who are over 30 years old, there are 3 of them. David Bakhtiari, Preston Smith, and Devondre Campbell. That is the grand total of our players who are over 30 years old.
And they're barely over 30. I mean, it's not like they're 35. They're what, 31, I think?
31 for Bakhtiari, 30 for Preston Smith and Devondre Campbell. So yeah, just barely over. Certainly no Mason Crosby, certainly no Aaron Rodgers as far as the age curve is concerned.
The other fun statistic on Bakhtiari at 31, he is the oldest player on a team in the league. So he's our oldest player, but he's the youngest of all the oldest players in the league. Other roster surprises, Jeff, I know you wanted to look at a guy talking about the defense, and we saw a lot of looks, and there was one point, or many points, I should say, during the preseason where our cornerbacks were Ballantyne and Valentine, and Carrington Valentine, the draft pick, the rookie. But the one surprise for me on the roster was Corey Ballantyne, and he's a 5th-year guy. I thought he played well enough to make the roster, but when we're talking about a youth movement, when we're talking about speed, Carrington Valentine got the nod and Ballantyne did not, and you really like Valentine.
I do. So he turns 20. He's not even 22 yet. I mean, the good news about Corey Ballantyne, he is on the practice squad. With Carrington Valentine, he either looked really good or not so much. So he had some real flashes, or he got burned, pass interference. But you know what? I liked watching him because he seemed to get the defense excited. I think that's really, really important. Now, the other thing is there's only currently 4 cornerbacks. They're good. The other 3 are veterans and are good. But so they said, okay, Mr. Valentine, we're going to add you to this group. And, maybe it's to boost morale or something. I don't know what it is. I mean, he certainly, I think, has the potential, the upside. If he gets burned once or twice, it's going to happen. But hopefully we're going to see lots of interceptions or at least passes defensed. He didn't have a ton of experience in college. He had 1 interception in his college career. So it's an interesting choice. We might see Eric Stokes back hopefully by week 5. But you know what? With these 4 guys apparently kind of staking their claim, or, maybe they're just going to be picking ducks out of the air because the defensive line is going to be getting to the quarterback so much.
It all starts up front. Yeah,
exactly. So who knows? I'm watching Carrington Valentine, and I'm hoping at some point this season there's a Valentine and a Ballantyne like there was in preseason. But kudos to Mr. Valentine and good luck to him.
I'm hoping that there's a Stokes and an Alexander out there as expected. Eric Stokes is on the PUP list. Couple of changes right away, Neil. 2 guys, Tariq Carpenter And Jonathan Ford, very excited yesterday probably to make the team. Now today, not so much. We picked up 2 new guys here.
After we did our only round of roster cuts, since we go right from 90 to 53 nowadays, we only technically had 2 tight ends on the roster, a third if you counted Josiah DeGuara, which sometimes they count as a fullback, sometimes as a tight end, but certainly fewer than you would expect. And so we thought maybe we might pick up some veteran tight end or somebody. And indeed, we claimed Ben Sims, tight end who was from Baylor originally, but then was for the Minnesota team, one of the 30 players that we actually brought in pre-draft. So somebody who is incredibly fast. He's 6'4.5", 250 pounds, and still runs a 4.58 40. That is a lot of speed for a man who's really large. And he apparently is a very good blocker as well. Not a lot of experience as far as pass receptions are concerned. You know, he had his share of touchdowns, but somebody who is incredibly fast. And again, going with that theme that Gutekunst tossed about today, that theme that John has been harping on for a while, speed, speed, speed. Ben Sims is further going to add to that speed that we have on offense, specifically from the tight end. This is not a U71 package if he's on. This is somebody who's going to be able to stretch the field, and at the same time, somebody who is going to be able to do the blocking work as well.
He's a guy that Green Bay did bring in for a visit too. So you know that they were keeping a little eye on him and to see what happened to him in Minnesota. And I didn't pay attention to Vikings camp this year. Jeff, I don't know if you did. Any idea why Ben Sims didn't make the roster there in Minnesota?
No, I watched some portions of the Vikings preseason games, and
you are a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, well, and you know, it was, yeah, they haven't won they haven't won a preseason game since like pre-COVID. I think it was like 2018 the last time. Not that preseason games again mean necessarily anything, but it's just interesting that they've got this extended losing streak of preseason games going. You know, a lot of their starters didn't play, and I have no idea, you know, with Ben Sims not making the team, why.
You're saying the Vikings fans use the preseason for a good beef Swellington?
I would guess so. And if you have to listen to the local Vikings feed, that's
even more.
So one other thing about Ben Sims is that he was an undrafted free agent. And so add that to the 3 undrafted free agents that the Packers actually kept, Manuel Wilson, Brenton Cox, and Malik Heath. We actually have 4 undrafted free agents from this year who are on our final 53-man roster. And just when it was 3, that was an incredible number. We're now at a streak of 19 consecutive years with an undrafted free agent making the roster. And the point has been made that this is a real help as far as recruiting undrafted free agents in that absolute chaos that you have after the 7th round of the draft is done. And the fact that we can make the statement that undrafted free agents make our team every single year, that is going to help our talent acquisition for those undrafted free agents. It's a situation where the success of one group of undrafted free agents begets the success of the next group of undrafted free agents. And so I'm really excited that we have this reputation in the NFL and among players of being a team that is really helping and looking for those undrafted free agents to make contributions.
Makes future undrafted free agents want to come here, right? Arguably the weakest position on the field for the Packers is at safety. Neil, they did, of those 2 guys they picked up today, another one is safety, and it feels like I think they're going to try to fling enough shit against the wall to see what sticks. What do we know about Zane Anderson?
Zane Anderson came into the league with Kansas City in 2021. He's been mostly a special team star. I think that's been sort of the major criticism that I've seen on Zane Anderson is that he's a special team star, but we've got kind of enough of those. We need people who actually can play safety. But, you know, he played with Kansas City for 2 years. He was at BYU before that. In the Buffalo training camp this year, Buffalo cut him at the cut down to 53. We picked him up. One very relevant point about Zane Anderson, though, is that in his career, he has 1 total career tackle and 1 Super Bowl ring. So if he can sort of keep up that ratio of Super Bowl rings, keeping up with his tackles, I think we're in really good shape.
All right, if we get him a 2nd tackle this year, then the other half has to fall into place, is what you're saying. As far as the practice squad goes, again, no surprises there. Most of the players who did not make the final 53, 16 players came back around, and they're going to hang out here in Green Bay. Not a bad place to stay. And I think throughout, you know, if we keep an eye on the practice squad throughout the year, we're going to go crazy because there's a lot of changes that happen. There's a lot of guys that get told, hey, don't go too far, you know, keep your apartment or wherever you're staying in town. So there's always some movement there at the bottom of the roster and the practice squad. And hey, you know, work is work, right? I guess if you're allowed to come into camp and put on the green and gold, you're going to stay in town and do what you can to help the team.
So one of the things about this year's practice squad is that it actually has two players who were drafted by the Packers. So last year, the Packers very famously kept all of their draft picks. This year, we had 13 draft picks, so even more. We kept 11 of them. Grant DuBose, 7th round wide receiver, injured most of camp. And Lou Nichols is the other. He was a running back, and he's not on the practice squad. He's going to be an injury settlement, but the statement is that he's likely going to be on the practice squad once that injury settlement period is through. So injuries essentially were the only things that kept the drafted Packers from this year's class from making the 53-man roster. And again, that's really impressive that we've got that. I know you can make a statement that that's impressive because we've got way too few older players who are still sticking around. And I think that's the other side of the coin. And statistics on Packers players from previous drafts are fairly stark. So 11 players are from the 2023 draft class, plus those 4 undrafted free agents. 9 of 11 players from the 2022 draft class are also on the 53-man roster, with today's cut players, Ford and Carpenter, being the only 2 that keep it from being perfect for that 2022 season. But 2021, we're down to only 5 players. 2020, we're down to 4, 3 from 2019, 1 from 2018, 1 from 2016, and then 1 from 2013. So we've got a very young roster. The downside of that is it means that we haven't been as successful as we'd really like in a lot of those late drafts in the Ted Thompson area, and including even in the beginning of the Brian Gutekunst era. So, I mean, part of this, you could say, well, it's great that we have this youth, but part of it is that, well, that means that we haven't been so successful in the past. And I'm hoping that the positive spin on this is the more correct spin rather than, well, the negative spin is also correct, but I'm hoping the positive spin is also correct rather than just rationalization.
Well, the other thing that a young team does is it helps your salary cap too. So we'll see how this year plays out. But provided there's a fair amount of success this year, there might be free agents that are interested in coming to Green Bay at the end of the season, for next year, because the Packers will have salary cap space. Because again, a lot of these guys, they're going to be playing on rookie contracts for years. So, obviously there's some huge paydays in there, but that's another interesting possibility.
And we'll kick the can down the road of, who's going to get extended, who's going to get a second contract with the team. I can see a lot of similarities to that Seattle Seahawks team after they won the Super Bowl. They had a lot of youth. And they ran into that situation as well, where they just were losing players because they couldn't pay everybody to be at the top of their position.
If that ends up being what we have to deal with, I will gladly take that.
Exactly.
Yes,
good problem to have.
We win a Super Bowl and we're going to have to deal with all of the cost of all of these great players. Oh, shucks.
Neil, you mentioned the kind of the injury bug with the 2 guys not making the 53. And I would say in this preseason, we were very fortunate, right, to not have any major injuries, right? I mean, Stokes is on the pup. We lose Tyler Davis. That's literally it. Everybody else looks like they're going to be healthy and ready to go. But we look at our Hall of Famer, and you've got the picture up there.
And the jersey.
What a devastating injury that was the year that he had his knee injury and against the Steelers in that game. So talking about Jordy Nelson going into the Packer Hall of Fame, save for that injury year, he was a beast on this team.
Yeah, Jordy Nelson is, well, you can see this is actually a signed photograph from Jordy in which he thanks my sister and says, love Jordy Nelson. That's her favorite player, but yeah, and favorite player of a lot of Packers fans from that era. And yeah, I mean, he was just somebody who had the speed, he had the size, he had the ability to catch balls in contested situations. Aaron Rodgers had complete trust in him. He was a beast. He was the guy that we needed when the situation called for it, and he delivered time again. But yeah, the injury was the one big problem. But thankfully that did not define his career.
And then Thursday night will be the induction ceremony in Green Bay. Jordy Nelson, along with Josh Sitton. Neil, one of your favorite linemen of all time. I know you're big on the linemen.
Yeah, any lineman who won a Super Bowl with this is going to be a favorite lineman as far as I'm concerned.
All right, and they are going into the Packer Hall of Fame. And just like that, it's time for our guest, as promised, a guy who goes by the Kentucky Cheesehead. Why? Well, he's from Kentucky, and he's a Packer fan. Chris, thanks for joining us. Say hi. Tell us what you're drinking.
My name's Chris, and tonight I'm drinking E.J. Curley's bourbon right out of a Green Bay Packers glass.
All right, and straight up, correct?
Oh, straight up.
Now, tell us about that bourbon. Is that like a local one that you find down there in Kentucky? You can't.
EJ Curley's is out of Louisville, I believe. Well, it's what you all call Louisville. We call it Louisville in Kentucky.
Louisville.
Louisville. But yeah, we drink our bourbon straight up over a little bit of ice, and not very nice.
All right, and that's a good one you're saying. All right. Chris, you hail from Kentucky, but you're living in Wisconsin now. Let's talk about your background. How did you become a Packer fan in Kentucky?
Back when I was in middle school, most people know that Kentucky is a college basketball state. We are UK, we are U of L. We have college football teams and they're legit, but we don't really know football in Kentucky like we do basketball. So the school that I went to had started up a football team. And, we're a bunch of hillbillies from Kentucky. We don't know anything about football. So they hired this coach. He comes in and says, hey, if you want to learn how to play football, you need to watch football. Okay. Well, everybody in Kentucky, they're Bengals, Cowboys, Steelers, all the cliche teams. I don't do cliche. So I flip on the TV one day, and I believe it was 93. So I was 12 years old. I flip on the TV, and there's a Packers game on TV. And I saw it, and I was like, as a kid, oh my God, this is my team. And, it was amazing. So that year for Christmas, my birthday falls on Christmas. My mom got me, Packers t-shirts, a Packers lunchbox, all the Packers gear, which she still has. She still has a t-shirt that will just now fit my arm. I mean, even as a kid, she said, oh my God, one day you're going to live in Wisconsin. Fast forward, I meet my wife. She's actually the Moonshine Mama. She's another alter ego at the Lot 1 tailgate. I meet her in 2008, and in 2013, for the first time, she takes me to Lambeau Field. It was a Sunday. It was December 23rd, 2013. If I'm not mistaken, it was about 16 degrees and about that much snow on the ground. I knew no one. I didn't know Lot 1. I didn't know John. I didn't know Scotty. I didn't know anyone. So we're sitting there and trying to tailgate with people and meet people. And at the end of the game, Matt Flynn was playing, actually. Aaron Rodgers was injured, so Matt Flynn was playing that game. So I didn't even get to see Aaron Rodgers. At the end of the game, we drive back to Sheboygan. We get a hotel for the night. I look at my wife and I said, I want to live in Wisconsin. She looked at me like, what? Why? What's here? I said, Packers. So 2013, the journey started, and then this is our 4th year. We moved up here, and people say, why? And I said, for the Packers. And they say, no, you didn't. Why did you really? Like, no, we really did. We actually packed up our lives, left Kentucky, came here for the Packers so I can drink a PBR from John every Sunday and just hang out with my friends and our friends, our family. I mean, everybody's become family at this point. It's not even a friendship anymore. It's family. So I left one family to come to another. Now my parents have a reason to come to Wisconsin. My dad's an old military dude. He was in the Army for 40 years. And now he gets to come up here, and he's, I have no reason to come to Wisconsin. But my dad likes beer, so it works out.
There you go.
It works
out. That's a good enough reason.
Exactly.
Well, we're glad that you're here, and you mentioned the Lot 1 tailgate party, and so we do talk about tailgating quite a bit on the podcast here, and Lot 1 is near and dear for me as well. Our friend Scott, who's been running that show for over 30 years, it's a kind of a mainstay. We're in the Lot 1 parking lot. It's pretty easy to find. And Chris, you've joined that. You've kind of jumped right in. We do shot skis. You've set up your own bar there. You had the Lambo Jeep for a while, which you've since retired. But you also make your own concoction of apple pie, the moonshine apple pie. Tell us how that came about.
I'm not going to lie. I mean, Scotty had his own. He would give us bottles at a time, and we would drink bottles at a time. And he actually told me, Scotty actually told me to make it your own, because I said, I want to make one of my own. I'm not trying to rip you off. I'm not trying to take away from your glamour because, I mean, he is the original. I mean, no one is going to top Scotty. But then, I mean, we're from Kentucky. I mean, moonshine started in Appalachia. I mean, that's where we're from. So that is our heritage. I grew up with bourbon. That's what I grew up with. You get sick, you rub bourbon on whatever hurts. It works. Me and my wife decided, you know what, we're going to come up with our own apple pie. And we did. I'm not going to say what's in it because once she watches this, if I say it, she's going to drag me up the stairs just so she can throw me down the stairs.
The protected recipe. I get it.
Yeah.
Yes,
All right.
very protected.
Coveted recipe.
She's come up with her own way of doing things and it works very well. People like it. So that's what we do.
Well, and it's one of those things where if you do it well, you can maybe the recipe you could patent or you could trademark the recipe and such. But you are looking to try to do that, right? I mean, ideally, if you could sell that product, that would be a nice thing to do.
We would love to. We would love to do that. I mean, everything in Wisconsin is brewery. I would like to do distillery because that's where bourbon's made. That's where the good stuff is made. Not saying beer's not good. I love beer, but I would love to one day have my own distillery with the moonshine mama just kind of standing over her people, making sure the product is right.
So there are a couple of distilleries in Wisconsin. Certainly you visited them. So what's your opinion of the Green Bay Distillery or the Door County Distillery or any others that you think are worthy at least of a starting point for distilleries in Wisconsin?
The Green Bay Distillery is one of our favorite places, even when it comes to just their vodka. I mean, they have a really good vodka, really smooth, and their food, the tailgate pizza. They actually have a tailgate pizza at the Green Bay Distillery. That's got chopped up brats, curds, caramelized onions, and I know way too much about that freaking pizza. But yes, it's a great place. Door County Distillery, I can't say that I've been to that one. We usually, when we go to Door County, it's the wineries. We do like wineries as well. And then Door County, is it Door County Peninsula Brewing, I believe is what it's actually called. We like their brewing. I love Green Bay Distillery.
But you're saying there's room for more distilleries within that market, and it's something that Green Bay and Wisconsin culture could appreciate.
Absolutely, because people in Wisconsin, I've learned, love their bourbon, and they know their bourbon because every time a bottle of Buffalo Trace hits the shelves at the local Piggly Wiggly, gone. So yeah, they like bourbon here.
So we went to the Packers-Bengals game, and we actually stayed in Covington. And that was, first of all, very hospitable in Covington. Can't say enough about the people there, but we walked around in the bars. And, that was kind of our thing was let's try the bourbons where we can find them. You mentioned Buffalo Trace. The Weller, which is a Buffalo Trace product, is the one that I really liked.
My go-to bourbon is always going to be Woodford.
Okay.
That is my go-to. John, I know you know Sipla very well. When Justin Sipla comes to town, he's actually stayed here a couple times, and we will put down a bottle of Woodford easily. It's actually kind of sad. It's how easy it is. But yeah, Woodford is my go-to. Four Roses. I love Four Roses. But yeah, Woodford. Oh my God, Woodford.
It's amazing you guys make it to the game after that.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite Woodford, the double oaked, or just
double oaked? If we can have double oaked, it's going to be double oaked all the way. Okay. But I will not turn down just a regular bottle of Woodford. And that's what Justin always brings. When Justin comes to the house, he brings a regular bottle of Woodford.
He's a good house guest then, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sipla loves us, and he loves the bourbon.
Kind of learning at this point, the process, different bourbons, what I like, what I like more. But certainly I've had a few on your whiskeys as well. So usually I'll go neat as well. It's like not going to mix them with anything or whatever, just to get.
If you have to mix, and this is what we tell people, this is just our opinion. Mm-hmm. If you have to put something in your bourbon, you're drinking shitty bourbon.
Yeah.
That's why we don't drink Jim Beam. Jim Beam is there's not even we don't even bring it into the house.
Yeah.
That's not even allowed in the house. If
What's
you
a
have to
rail
put some,
bourbon at most bars in Wisconsin? That's your rail.
Yeah.
right,
it's a
that's
bourbon, yeah.
exactly. Now, I mean, anytime I order an old fashioned, my wife included, we order bourbon old fashioned sour, and we'll take Bullet. Bullet's okay. I can live with Bullet bourbon. I can live with Wild Turkey, but Jim Beam, you could just
That's a
down the
non-starter for
drain.
you.
No,
All right.
it's garbage.
What about on the beer side? I know you mentioned our favorite, our PBRs, but Jeff and Neil are beer guys. They want to hear something intense that you like for beer. What's something that you enjoy?
Not just throwing him out there, but our local brewery right here in Manitowoc, Pet Skull Brewing, good friend of mine, Paul, he's got it going on. He's a heavy metal dude, all the heavy music, and most of his beers are named after heavy music. He's got one called Raining Blood. Of course, if you're a Slayer fan, you know what we're talking about. And it's a blood orange. It's magnificent. But yeah, we've got Pet Skull, we've got Craft Creek. Craft Creek is a good beer. They're more of a sit down, just kind of a chill type of beer. They're really known for their sours. They've got multiple sours. They've got a raspberry and I want to say a blueberry, but they've got some really good sours. And we've got Sabbatical. And Sabbatical, really cool story about them. They're actually getting ready to put out another Packers Superfan beer. They've done St. Vince, and they've also done Jeff Kalo, which me and John know very well. Tundra Man with the icicles. And this year is Wayne Sargent. They just announced Wayne Sargent is going to be their super fan on their beer can. So they do that. I don't know if you're familiar with Three Sheeps.
Mhm.
Three Sheeps down in Sheboygan. Three Sheeps is my place. I love Three Sheeps' beer. The Three Sheeps pills, I'll sit there and I'll pound that like a freaking PBR all day. It's just a really good drinking beer, and it's yeah.
Neil, you're nodding your head all the way through this. That doesn't make for great radio. You got to jump in here.
I'd have to go back into my Untapped to know exactly what's going on here, but I love hearing about the different Wisconsin breweries, and I have not visited enough of them. I've visited sort of the Green Bay metro area ones, but going down along the lakeshore is something that needs to be added to my road in future trips.
And I hate interrupting, but if you want to experience multiple beers, we have a place. It's right in between Manitowoc and Two Rivers. It's called Tapped on the Lakeshore. A good friend of mine, Sam, owns it. I host trivia there. I host music bingo there. But he actually has 24 beers on tap at all times, and they're from all over the state. It could be Three Sheeps. It could be Anape up in Kewanee. It could be all over. He actually has a Kentucky bourbon barrel ale, and they had that before we even moved up here. So that's just what they do. People like it. It's a good beer. But yeah, 24 beer. They have 24 beers on tap at all times. They'll make you clammies. They'll make you bloodies. They'll do mimosas. They'll do whatever you want to do. They have axe throwing. But yeah, it's a really
Drinking and axe throwing, nothing beats that.
You know what? I knew you were going to say that, but they actually have a shirt that says beer and axes. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Well, Neil, we know where to look now. We know where to go on our
Yeah.
next time that you're in town, right?
Yeah,
It sounds like a plan.
And Sam's a good friend of mine. He's actually we play fantasy football together. We go to deer camp together. We're good friends.
Taking a look at the team, though, I want to go back to your fandom, because you mentioned football in Kentucky isn't really that big, and you've got the University of Kentucky, but you had a guy a few years ago named Randall Cobb who got drafted and came and played in Green Bay, and this was before you even came to Green Bay as a fan. How big was that when Randall Cobb became a Packer?
It was actually really big because at the time I was working for Lowe's. I was actually in college and I was working part-time at Lowe's in London, Kentucky. I don't know if you all remember the old toolboxes. They were, taller than a human, but they had speakers built in. And so what they did was they opened one of those up and then they tuned it in because they knew Randall Cobb was going to go. So they were playing it throughout the Lowe's in London, Kentucky, speakers everywhere. And I had called my wife. I said, I have a feeling he's going to get drafted by the Packers. And that was just hopeful because, I just wanted to see it happen. And so I'm sitting there, stocking shelves, doing my job. All of a sudden, the speakers come on, and I can't even remember what the draft number was. The Packers select Randall Cobb. And I just kind of dropped what I was doing. I ran down the hall. I was running down aisles. I was like, oh my God, Randall Cobb just went to the Packers. Because Randall Cobb's a good guy. Everybody loved him in Kentucky. He was just a really nice guy. And that was amazing.
And then going back to your first game in 1993, that had to have been a Brett Favre game. I mean, did you turn that on and see a good Southern boy there?
Yes.
Brett Favre, is that what turned you on there?
From Kill, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Brett Favre. When I turned 40, my wife got me that.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
My first actual Favre. She said, I've got you a present and you're probably gonna cry. I'm military, I don't cry, right? I cried. Because Favre he will always be my favorite Packer of all time. So yeah.
Well, your wife and my wife think alike, because for my 30th birthday, I got an autographed Favre football, which is up behind me here.
Okay, so I've got the helmet, you've got the football, and you've got the jersey. What do you got?
Trifecta.
What do you got? You got the cleats or something?
No, I think
jockstrap. Nice.
No, I do not. I'm not an autograph collector in general, so
I'm not either. I've got a helmet right here. I've got it signed by Dave Robinson. I've got a Paul Hornung right here, Gilbert Brown. But yeah, I got a few up there.
There's actually a good story about this jersey, Chris. In January of 1996, so I had moved back to Green Bay, and Scotty and I were working together at McSwiggan's in Green Bay. But I had picked up a couple of jobs there, and one of the other jobs I was working was for the Boys and Girls Club in Green Bay. And the Boys and Girls Club that season, it was the first season they did a thing called the Brett Favre Challenge for Kids, where they got a bunch of businesses like CEOs and people like that to donate X amount of dollars for every Brett Favre touchdown. And that was the year, I think he threw 38 touchdowns that year. And so they were on the hook for a lot of money. And then Brett matched all of their funds. It was like a big $75,000, and we did the oversized check and everything for him to donate. But it was the week before that Dallas NFC Championship game. On a Wednesday night, Brett sat and autographed jerseys and whatever the kids brought in. We had a couple hundred kids, did all these autographs, and being on staff, we got to bring something in. And I told Scott about it going in, and Scott said, if I buy the jerseys, will you get me an autograph? I said, sure. So he bought 2 of these Favre jerseys, and I got them both autographed by Brett, and Scott has one and I have the other one. And my mom then went and framed and matted that for me for a Christmas present. So I've had this one almost 30 years now.
That's beautiful.
I don't know what Scott did. I'm sure he has it. I don't know what he did with the other one. We'll have to ask him next time we see him. So enough nostalgia. How about this current team, Chris? Do you like where they're headed? We've spent the part before you came on talking about the youth movement. Young, fast team. What do you like?
I was looking over the players that were released, and my biggest surprise was Chris Slayton. That I actually sat outside the fence, at training camp and watched him. And he was speeding up. He was getting faster and just meaner. And then there was that other guy, Odumwegu. He got a game ball. And then to take him out and just put him on. I'm glad he's on the practice team. That's cool and everything. But I thought he had earned a spot because, that dude was putting in work.
Well, there's only 53 spots. That's the downside, but we were talking about that too. I think there's an honor, being on the practice squad, and we were talking about, I think, how guys get treated in Green Bay, especially if they're undrafted players, and they get told, hey, don't go far, stick around. We've always got a place for you. Next week we're going to kind of do our whole prediction of the season, all the teams and what we think the Packers are going to finish up, but we're going to put you on the spot here. After an 8-9 season last year, where is this team going to end up this year? What do you like?
If you had asked me before I saw any practices, any preseason, I would have said this is a 5-win team. Now, can we take anything from preseason? A little bit, not too much, but I think we're a 10-win season. We're going to lose some that people are keyboard warriors. Oh God, it's the worst thing in the world. Bring back Aaron Rodgers. No, Jordan Love is going to have a good season. I really believe that. And if he doesn't, Sean Clifford looks damn good.
10-7? Is 10-7 going to be good enough to win the division?
I've said this to a few people, and they give me the same look you three are about to give me. You better fear the Lions. I think
Okay.
the Lions could scare some people this year.
All right.
I don't think it's this year. I think we may squeak one out again this year with the hype around Jordan and, people not taking him serious. Maybe he's going to win some games that he shouldn't. But watch out for the Lions in the coming seasons. That's just me.
Okay, fair enough. And like I said, we'll put our picks out there next week. As far as the season goes, Chris tailgates with us in Lot 1. You can find us there at every home game, green package and gold package. Neil, we don't discriminate on our fans there, even though one of us might not always like the Milwaukee fans. Preseason's been kind of light, though, the first 2 games. Are you ready to go September 24th?
Oh, I've been ready. Of course, tailgating Hall of Fame.
There you go.
Nice.
My wife and I earned those this year. So there's only 5 of those at Lambeau Field, and my wife and I have 2 of them. So yeah, I'm ready. We're going to make a fresh batch of apple pie within the next week or so. We got a new flag coming. We've got new stickers. We got business cards, all of it. So yeah, we're ready to tailgate. I'm ready to play.
All right. Well, we're working on some music playlists. We'll get the crowd ready to roll. If anybody's interested in trying Chris's moonshine apple pie, come on out. If you really want to drop him some seed money to get him a distillery going, he is more than happy to go into business with you if you're interested. So you can stop by the Lot 1 tailgate party to find the Kentucky Cheesehead. I didn't even think to ask, do you have an online presence? Do you have, I know you made a little logo for yourself. Do you put that out online anywhere?
We are actually starting a couple of things. We actually have a new Facebook page. It's called Our Old Kentucky Home Tailgate Bar, and we're going to put some videos up. It's not really live right now. I've done some interviews at the last tailgate where I talked to some people from Washington State, found some people from Kentucky actually. So I'm going to put some more content up there, but eventually it's all going to be live, and I'm going to keep just pouring the stuff into it, and YouTube channel, all that stuff. So
any words of wisdom before we get you out of here?
all I can say is come to Lambeau, come to Lot 1, and come say hey to all of us. Everybody's welcome, no matter if you're a Bears fan or a Packers fan. Everybody's welcome. Just come say hey to everybody at Lot 1. We're going to have a good time.
Sure, it's an open party. We want visiting fans and first-time fans to get that Lambeau experience. And Chris, I'm glad you're part of it and looking forward to another great season.
Thank you very much.
And it's the end of the preseason. Next week, like I said, we're going to have our season preview. We're going to start our 3rd season for the GBC podcast. We're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to the 2023 season. Chris, thanks for joining us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. It's all free. You can also find the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat. That's all one word, Green Bay Chat. We are on Twitter, still Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and Spotify. And the Facebook is the GBC podcast, Green Bay Chat. And may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Right.